Let's open the file on typography. We begin with understanding that a typeface is the design of an alphabet in a set of characters. A set of characters that have a particular size and style of formation of each character are collectively called a font, like Times New Roman and Arial. Here the names of fonts are written in their own particular style. The computer uses three basic kinds of font formats. Raster fonts are made up of pixels and are faster and easier to use, but require a separate font for each point size. The outline fonts use Bezier curves and stroke fonts use a series of lines. Both these fonts can be resized from a single font, but they take more time to render. The most common type of fonts are the true type fonts that are outline fonts and can be used on Mac and Windows operating systems. OpenType is designed by Adobe and Microsoft. And there are the meta fonts. When font is available in bold and italics too, then this set is called a type family. Like the font Times New Roman is a type family. There are hundreds of fonts and one is tempted to use several fonts on the same page of design. But that is not a good idea. Only 3 to 4 different fonts on a page look good. And also, one sentence cannot have two fonts unless there is a good reason for it. Fonts are mainly divided into serif fonts, sans serif fonts, monospace fonts, and script fonts. But mainly they are divided into serif fonts and sans serif fonts. Let's understand this. Do you notice that the serif fonts have tiny strokes colored red for clarity at the end of the characters? These are called serifs. Those fonts without these tiny strokes are called sans serif, where sans is French for without. Generally, printed material like newspapers use serif fonts. For viewing on the computer screen, usually sans serif fonts are used as they are considered easier to read on low resolution computer screens. Font sizes and fonts can be set to your liking. Watch. Let's look at a paragraph and how it can be formatted. It contains a single idea and you begin it on a new line. Sometimes though, you leave a space between two paragraphs. There is the hard enter and the soft enter where the next paragraph begins closer to the first. Watch. These are the keyboard shortcuts for both hard and soft enter. The text of a paragraph too can have different formats like left aligned, centered text, right aligned, and justified. Let's see what they look like. This is left aligned when each line begins at the left margin but doesn't necessarily reach the right margin. This is centered text when every line is in the center between the left and right margin. This is right aligned text, the opposite of left aligned text. This is justified when each line in the paragraph begins and ends at the left and right margins, and only the last line may not reach the right margin depending on its length. Let's look at the elements of a type. A frequently used term in typography is kerning. It's the space between two characters in a font, and it is typical to that font. But for designing purposes, this space can be increased or decreased. Watch how it is done. When at 0, the space is as specified by the font. I can decrease or go negative and increase it to go positive. It can adjust the space between two awkward looking characters of the alphabet, like W and A here. You can see that this space can be adjusted while that between A and R cannot be. Tracking also adjusts the space between characters, not an entire font, but in a group of letters or a block of text. This is what happens when kerning is applied. And this is when tracking is applied. You can see that tracking adjusts space between all characters. And so, it can give evenly spaced letters and has a wider spacing. Weight of a font is just as your and my weight, thickness compared to height. In the same font family, sometimes there is a normal and a narrow font. Watch. And some fonts are heavier than others, just like people. Glyph is an element of writing. It is the set of instructions for the lines and curves that make up a character in a font. See some characters with different glyphs. InDesign makes selecting a type easier by having a glyph palette. It's a character map of all the glyphs in a typeface. It shows you at a glance exactly which characters are included in a font. Watch. Next typographic element is indent and is typically 5 spaces. They are the first line indent at the beginning of a paragraph and the left indent and right indent when all lines in a paragraph are shifted in relation to the left margin or the right margin. Watch as I use the paragraph formatting options for it. This is an indented paragraph even though it is a bullet point. Now, no indent. And now, align to the rest of the bullets. Let's learn about the Tab command on your keyboard. It's a very time-saving key. This key creates a specific amount of space by pressing it once. Saves you from pressing the space bar again and again and again. They can be added, deleted, or moved to the measurements I want. There are 4 kinds of tabs: the left tab stop, the right tab stop, the center tab stop, and the decimal tab stop. Let's change the setting of these tab stops. Watch. Note their different text formatting. Let me use tab settings to make my expenditure list. Watch. The space between the two entries is very disturbing. So, let's make a dotted line there called leader leading to the tab. I make changes to the leading. Watch. But it's better with paragraph formatting as space can be controlled in small increments. Just as the space you see between these two paragraphs and the headline and the paragraph. The default setting of a font is usually set as 10-point typeset with 120% leading. Now to create space between paragraphs. Watch. I could have used the double hard returns, but it's better with paragraph formatting as space can be controlled in small increments. Just as the space you see between these two paragraphs and the headline, let's look at bullets and numbering of lists. Set where the next bullet is placed. Set the space between bulleted lines. Set the shape of the bullet. There is a range of creative bullets. The bullets could even be numbers. Watch. And again, spacing between the lines can be changed. There can also be a combination of numbers and letters to create subpoints. For clarity, you can also have the number along with the subpoints. Don't worry, this software will copy-paste the bullet formatting too. The paragraph rule says that when I press enter, a new line will be generated. We all know that, don't we? But there's more to it. Watch. Enter now creates a line. You can explore more options. Another type element that can be adjusted is hyphenation. This allows that last word in a line to be hyphenated so that too much space is not left blank. Watch. Remember to adhere to the rules of hyphenation. Not more than two hyphenations in a row, not too many hyphenated line endings in one paragraph. The right edge of the text shouldn't have blanks or stuck out letters because of hyphenation. The text should be readable and look natural always. Sometimes a paragraph ends on the next page, leaving a phrase hanging on top of a page. In typography, it is called the widows. There are also orphans of typography, which is the last word of a para but is left alone at the beginning of a line, like this. The subscript and superscript terms are usually used in science or mathematics text, like this. Then you have the more common ones like these: bold, the underline, the italics, and the strike through that you will get to use very often. When setting the type of a book, it's important to specify the page breaks and the section breaks because the page layout of each computer is different and may not create the same number of pages. It is dependent on page orientation, whether landscape or portrait, margins, columns, line numbering, vertical alignment, headers and footers, page numbering, paper size, and paper source. Sometimes the first letter of a paragraph is decorated or is simply larger than the body text of the paragraph. Such a large initial letter that drops below the first line of a paragraph is called a drop cap, as you can see. Watch how it is done. When creating a document, you need to have a uniform formatting. The several commands used for the spacing between paras and for the indents and bullets, all these collectively are called a style. I can have a paragraph style and a character style. Now watch. As I change the head, subhead, body text and bullets. Same way with character styles. Text wrap is a very creative style of combining text and shapes. It places the text all around the shape, nearly wrapping the shape with the paragraph. And you can use from several templates. Sometimes, increasing the font size is not the ideal option as it increases the character size uniformly. There is also another option to increase the font size vertically or horizontally like this. As italics will slant the characters only to the right, we could use Q to slant them left. Let's see what baseline shift means. But first, let's make the baseline appear. There. Now watch as I shift the baseline. while Subscript and Superscript will shift the baseline of the characters to a default position. Baseline Shift option allows shifting by short steps to exactly where I want. Watch. This brings us to the end of a very important module, typography.